The rules committee is gone, official power level brackets, and possible unbannings. There's a lot to talk about in this newest announcement from Wizards of the Coast. In the Wizards of the Coast article on the future of Commander, WotC lays out a bunch of things that they have gone over in the past week since the last update they've made. In case you missed it, 4 cards have been banned. Nadu, Dockside, Jeweled Lotus, and Mana Crypt. They have been banned by the Rules Committee. Now, the Rules Committee was a group of about 5 people that were not a part of Wizards of the Coast, but just kind of took oversight of the Commander community. They made the decisions on bans, whereas in other formats, WotC is the one that usually does this. So in this article, which you can go read down below, Wizards of the Coast basically says that there had been a lot of threats that were made to this community. There was a lot of turmoil caused by these bans and a lot of frustration. So they set out to make some changes and make sure that things like this don't happen again and make sure that the community is somewhat pleased for the most part. Just trying to find solutions. In bold, it says, "So today, in partnership with members of the existing Rules Committee, we are announcing that the Rules Committee is giving management of the Commander format to the game design team at Wizards of the Coast." So this means that Wizards of the Coast is actually going to now have control over this and over this format. No longer can you blame these groups of people that are maybe not so qualified or that are not a part of Wizards of the Coast directly. Wizards of the Coast is now in full control over ban lists and the Rules Committee. While ownership of the format may be changing, members of the Rules Committee and others in the community will continue to be involved, and the vision for the social format will not change. We've had some preliminary conversations about what we would like to accomplish and some ideas we'll be rolling out together in a few months. So what does this mean? Basically, Wizards of the Coast has full control now over the Rules Committee, with some of the previous Rules Committee members following along. Now, then they have a link to their Discord where you can go join. I think you should. But next is the most important part of this whole thing, and the coolest part of this whole thing. I've made videos in the past about Rule 0 and Power Level and different cards, all to your dismay or your pleasure. You know, a lot of people have opinions about the opinions that I've put out there about this game, and especially about Power Level and Rule 0. But it seems like WotC is trying to figure out a solution to that. WotC says, "We do want to share one of the things we've been starting to work on, a more objective approach to deck power level and additional guidance and shared language for players to find games that match the type of game they're trying to play. This means that Wizards of the Coast is trying to standardize power levels. It's no longer a thing of just, I think it's this, and people just have to go off of what you say. They're trying to make sort of lists and brackets that give you power level rankings. So here's the idea. There are 4 brackets, and every commander deck can be placed in one of these brackets. Bracket 1 is basically the baseline of an average pre-constructed deck or below. And bracket 4 is very high power. So for the lower tiers, like tier 1, basically that's a pre-con straight out of the box. It's probably some budget decks as well, and typically it's on the lower power side. Typically what you would say is like maybe a 4 or 5, sometimes even a 6, because there's not really any 3s or 2s or 1s. For the lower tiers, we may lean on a mixture of cards and a description of how the deck functions, and the higher tiers are likely to be defined by more explicit lists of cards. So the higher power list, like if it's a 4, it's probably around CEDH level. It's probably going to have a bunch of really fast mana cards. It's going to have tutors in it. It's going to have a lot of that stuff. So in most cases, a lot of decks are now becoming 4s, which means that they're at the highest level. This can sometimes be hard because if you just squish kind of the decks together, it can be kind of tough. For example, you can have a deck that runs super effective and it might be considered a 4 in your eyes. However, going up against a CEDH deck will not really be worth it, and it won't really stand a chance against decks like that. This is where, of course, the system's not perfect, but we're getting closer to a standardized power ranking, which I think is amazing. So, for example, you can imagine Bracket 1 has cards that easily go into any deck: Swords to Plowshare, Grave Titan, and Cultivate. Whereas Bracket 4 would have cards like Vampiric Tutor, Armageddon, and Grim Monolith. So basically just really powerful cards that typically have higher salt levels and typically have a lot of bang for their buck in terms of their mana cost. Now, in my speculation, this might mean that some of these cards might come off the ban list and just simply be put in these categories. Now, is this a stretch? Yeah, it's quite a stretch. I'm not sure if we're going to get Dockside back or we're going to get Mana Crypt back or Jeweled Lotus back. But if they were to come back, they probably would be in the 4 category and would just have to say, hey, my deck's a 4 because I run Dockside. In which case, you won't go up against things like a tier 3 deck or a tier 2 deck. You'll go up against other tier 4 decks, which I think is awesome. So it also says in this system, your deck will be defined by its highest bracket card or multiple cards. So if you have one card that's in the tier bracket of 4, you're going to have to say that your deck is a 4. Now, of course, there's some adjustments that can be made. If you only have one card in there that's considered a 4 and everything else is considered a 1 or 2, it's probably not a 4. So you'll probably have to make some adjustments that way in your language that you give. In this example, they say, my deck is a 4 with Ancient Tomb, but a 2 without Ancient Tomb, which is perfectly reasonable. The thing I want to say is that typically if a card is a 2, it works best with other 2s. Typically, you're not going to have a 4 that is just so overtuned and so overpowered that kind of fits well into a 1 or 2, right? Just because you put a Dockside in your precon does not necessarily mean your precon is going to be that much better. So I think this kind of system is really good for that. Now, will this system ensure perfectly matched games? Absolutely not. But they're trying to standardize a way that we can rank these power levels better, and we can get closer to a solution that gets people to play on even level playing field. I'm super excited for this change. I've always complained about power levels in this game. I've always thought that, not having a standardized way to recognize the power level of a deck is pretty tough. I think one way we can make this go even further is by, if every deck has a power ranking out of 4, or maybe we say out of 5 eventually, every card gets a rating on their value, and then you're able to kind of average these decks out. So let's say a Dockside's a 5, a Mana Crypt's a 5, a Jeweled Lotus is a 5, and you have a deck full of these cards that are 4s and 5s. Well, then you can say that your deck on average is like a 4.78, something super specific like that. And you can have something like this in Moxfield. You can have it on all these different platforms that are able to just scalp this data, and you can get an average ranking for your deck. So you as an individual can know how strong your deck actually is. Now, again, is this system perfect either? Absolutely not. Again, you can have really, really, really powerful cards in your deck and your deck can still be trash. But you can also have really, really weak cards and budget lists that still can compete at a CEDH level. No system like this in a subjective game, in a game that's Highlander, is going to be perfect. But I love this step and approach from Wizards of the Coast, and I think they're doing an awesome job. I think allowing the rules committee to be officially a part of Wizards of the Coast is going to be great, because I think that's a big reason people were so upset, is that it's run by people that are not a part of Wizards of the Coast. And having Commander now be an official format from Wizards of the Coast is awesome. And then also standardizing power rankings is amazing. It makes me as a Magic player feel much more secure about my game. I know that in the future, I can sit down and give a very accurate rating to my deck and have someone give me a very accurate rating of their deck also. It seems like a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to these changes, and in the next couple months, as they get more implemented, it will be really interesting to see how this pans out. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a comment, like, and subscribe. We're very close to 10,000 subscribers. We're almost there, folks. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time.